We're going to finish the 9th parak today and begin the 10th parak, Be'ezras Hashem. So we saw yesterday a machlokas between Rav and Shmuel as to whether or not we apply the principle of pitikra yored v'sosein, whether when you have just a ceiling without walls, we call that an achsadra, where you have posts instead of 4 posts holding up a ceiling. Do you say that the edge of the ceiling, because it's perpendicular to the ground, you say that you imagine it creating walls going all the way down? Do you say gurachis mechitzta? And so Rav says that you do, Shmuel says that you don't. We had qualified it that Shmuel is only machmir, only when you need 4 walls in order to be able to create your structure. So the Gemara now asks or suggests the following: Lema, where it's the 5th line of the Gemara, or Lema Abaye v'Rava b'plukta Rav u'Shmuel kamiflagi. Let us suggest that just like there's a machlokas between Rav and Shmuel, it's the same machlokas between Abaye and Rava. De itmar, as it was stated, sichech al gabe achsadra sheyesh lo ptzimin kesheira, that if a person, this is now not talking about Hilchas Shabbos, this is talking about Hilchas Sukkah, that if a person has an achsadra and he places schach over the slats that form the rooftop of the achsadra, apparently there's room for schach, right? And then he also places pitzimim, which are vertical slats along the sides of the achsadra to create walls. They don't have to be actual walls, they could just be posts within 3 tvachim of each other, and you apply the principle of lavud. So everyone holds that that's a kosher sukkah because you've got walls and you've got schach. However, ein la ptzimin, but if you don't have those ptzimim, you don't have those vertical slats on the ground, so Abaye Omar Ksheira v'Rava Omar Psula. That Abaye says it's still a kosher sukkah, and Rava says it's a pasul sukkah. Abaye Omar Ksheira Omar Pitikra Omrinan Pitikra Yored V'Soisem, Rava Omar Psula Lo Omrinan Pitikra Yored V'Soisem. So Abaye says it's kosher because we use the edge of the structure that supports the schach as the top of our imaginary wall, and it goes down to the ground. And Rava says you do not say that. Lema Abaye Karav v'Rava Kishmuel. So that let us therefore suggest that this is the exact machlokus between Rav and Shmuel regarding whether you say pitikra yored v'sosem regarding Hilchas Shabbos. So the Gemara says no. Aliba de Shmuel kuli alma lo pligi. The Gemara says I could argue with you like this. Abaye and Rava both agree that according to Shmuel this sukkah will not work. But the machlokus is, according to Shitas Rav, will the sukkah work or not? Kiplig aliba de Rav, Abaye karav, Abaye will tell you, well, just like Rav says that it works in Hilchas Shabbos to allow you to carry under the roof, so too with Hilchas Sukkah, this allows you, this is a duly constituted sukkah, and it's kosher. V'Rava, ad kan lo kamer Rav hasam ela dahani mechitzos la'achsadra avidi, aval hacha dahani mechitzos lav l'sukkah avidi lo. And Rava will tell you no. While I grant you that Rav holds you say pitikra yored v'sosein in Hilchas Shabbos, that's only because when you assembled the achsadra to begin with, your intention in assembling the achsadra was for the purpose of habitation underneath the roof of that achsadra. And therefore, when you create those imaginary walls in your mind, they're an extension of walls that were set up to allow you to habitate under the roof of the achsadra. But in a situation of the sukkah, since the achsadra predates the sukkah, the creation of the sukkah, the structure of the achsadra was not constituted initially for the purpose of making a sukkah. And as a result, we do not say, in this case, pitikra yored v'sosem, because the only time you say pitikra yored v'sosem is when the edge of that roof that you're using as your beginning of your wall was made for the purpose of what you want to accomplish with those walls. So in Hilchas Shabbos, Rav says it works because the objective of the achsadra was to habitate underneath the roof. But over here, the objective of the achsadra was not to have mitzvah sukkah underneath the achsadra initially when you constructed it, and therefore Rav says that you don't say pitikra yored v'sosem here by Hilchas Sukkah. Now, ironically, Rashi points out something ironic. He says, normally in Hilchas Sukkah, we do not require a sukkah to be constructed lishma. So a monkey can build your sukkah for you, and it's perfectly kosher, right? You don't need kavana when you're building your sukkah. So l'chaora, there's a stira here. Why do you need to have the pitikra yored v'sosem being constructed l'shem sukkah? You don't need lishma when we talk about sukkah construction. Rashi says the only time that we don't require lishma for sukkah construction is for the actual physical structure itself. But to imagine walls, that far the Chachamim did not go. The Chachamim say that if you're going to rely on imaginary walls, then the beginning of that imaginary wall has to at least be l'shem sukkah in order for it to work. Okay, let us go weiter. Rabbi Yossi Omer im mutar. Rabbi Yossi says, remember we had seen this machlokas between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yehuda had said that if your structure collapses on Shabbos such that now you have a breach to Rishus HaRabim, or if you had a mavui and the lechi or the korah falls off in the middle of Shabbos, so then Rabbi Yehuda says, well, since you could carry at the beginning of Shabbos, we allow you to continue carrying the whole Shabbos. And Rabbi Yossi disagrees, and he says, no, if it will be permitted for you to carry this way on future Shabbosos, then you're allowed to carry now. But if you're not going to be allowed to carry it with this system with future Shabbosos, then you're not going to be permitted to carry now. And the way that he presented it was in an ambiguous language where you could interpret it one of two ways. Either he's coming to be Mekel and tell you that it's fine, you can carry now and you can carry in future Shabbosos this way, or he's coming to be Machmir and tell you that just like you cannot carry for future Shabbosos this way, you're not allowed to carry now. So Iboyeluhu Rabbi Yossi la'esor o lahatir. And that's really the Gemara's question: is he coming to be Machmir or is he coming to be Mekel? Amar Rav Sheshes le'esor. He's coming to be Machmir. V'chein Amar Rabbi Yochanan le'esor. And that's what Rabbi Yochanan says as well, that he's coming to be Machmir to tell you, and we had spoken this out, he's coming to tell you that no, now since the structure is collapsed, we don't allow you to carry anymore. Tanya Nami Hachi, Amar Rabbi Yossi, Kishem Shasurin La'asid Lavo, Kach Asurin La'osir Shabbos. And that's explicit in the Brisa, that Rabbi Yossi is quoted as saying that just like with this kind of structure which is deficient, you cannot carry for future Shabbosos, you also cannot carry for the Shabbos as well. So Itmar Rav Chia Bar Yosef Omar, Halacha Rabbi Yossi, Ushmol Amar Halacha Rabbi Yehuda. So Rav Chia's paskins like Rabbi Yossi to be Machmir, and Shmuel says the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, that you can be Mekel. As long as you had a kosher structure at the inception of Shabbos, even if it collapses, we allow you to continue carrying the whole Shabbos. So Frek the Gemara, Umi Amar Shmuel Hachi. Since when did Shmuel say this? In other words, by the way, this is very consistent with the machlokas we had seen previously 2 days ago with Rav and Shmuel, where we had said that Rav holds that if you have two chutzers that have a wall between them, and then the wall collapses on Shabbos, so Rav says you're not allowed to carry anymore, and Shmuel says you are allowed to carry. So Shmuel seems to be consistent with what he had said previously, that since at the inception of Shabbos it was okay to carry, then even when the structure collapses, you're allowed to continue. But the Gemara is going to challenge that, because v'hatznan, we have a Mishnah, and we're coming actually in the middle of a Mishnah. So let me just give you the background. The background of the Mishnah is that the Mishnah starts off with the statement that you're not allowed to make an ERU for someone unbeknownst to them, without their das, without their consent. So comes along Rabbi Yehuda and says, Amar Rabbi Yehuda b'medvar mamurim be'eruvei tchumen. But that's only true when it comes to making an eruv tchumen. And why do you need that person's knowledge? Because you don't know. Maybe he doesn't want to travel an extra 2,000 amas to the north. Maybe he wants an extra 2,000 amas to the south. Or maybe he doesn't want to have any extra area other than what he normally has, 2,000 amas in all directions. So that's only true by Eruv Tchumen, that you need his consent. Aval be'eruvei chatzeros ma'arvin bein ladas bein shelo ladas, lefi shezachan ladam shelo b'fanav, bein chavin shelo b'fanav. But when it comes to making an eruvei chatzeros, since there's only benefit and there's no liability to make an eruv for a guy, so then we can do it even unbeknownst to him, because he never loses anything by having an eruv contributed for him to be incorporated in the chatzer. V'amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel halacha ka Rabbi Yehuda. And on that, Shmuel was quoted as saying that we paskin like Rabbi Yehuda, that you can make an eruv unbeknownst to someone, v'lo od, but I'll go even further, he says, ela kol makom sheshana Rabbi Yehuda be'eruv and halacha kamoso, that everywhere where Rabbi Yehuda is quoted in Hilchas Eruvin, we paskin like Rabbi Yehuda. Now, if we were to stop there, everything would be great. Shmuel paskins like Rabbi Yehuda here too. But now there was a qualification. V'amalei Rav Chana Bagdata l'Rav Yehuda. That comes along Rav Chana from Baghdad and asks Rav Yehuda the following question. Amar Shmuel afilu b'mavai shenitel karasa olechayav. Does Shmuel paskin like Rabbi Yehuda, even in a situation where the lechi or the korah fell off the mavoi? In other words, does Shmuel hold that even when the lechi or korah falls off the mavoi in the middle of Shabbos, that you're allowed to continue carrying? So Shmuel said, no, I don't paskin like Rabbi Yehuda over there. Shmuel will tell you, I only paskin like Rabbi Yehuda when it comes to the methods of incorporating a shared area which is duly enclosed. But when the physical structure of the area has been compromised, that's not an issue of making an eruv, of making an incorporated entity. There you have to actually repair the physical structure. There we do not paskin like Rabbi Yehuda. So this is a direct contradiction to what we're saying now. Here we're saying that even when it comes to the physical structure that is compromised, Shmuel paskins lakula like Rabbi Yehuda. And here it's quite explicit that Shmuel does not paskin like Rabbi Yehuda when the physical structure is compromised. So Amar of Anan l'didimi farshali minei de Shmuel kansha nifritz l'karmelis kansha nifritz l'rishus harabim. So he explains that Shmuel only sometimes paskins like Rabbi Yossi, but not all the time. When does he paskin like Rabbi Yossi? Only when the breach opens up into a karmelis, so that the most that you have is an Isser D'Rabbanan. There Shmuel agrees that since he paskins like Rabbi Yehuda. There he paskins like Rabbi Yehuda that since there's only an Isser D'Rabbanan involved at worst, since it was duly constructed at the inception of Shabbos, then even if it collapses in the middle of Shabbos, you're allowed to continue carrying. When does he not paskin like Rabbi Yehuda and he's machmir like Rabbi Yossi? When the breach opens up into a rishus harabim, and that's why when the lechi or korah falls off a mavoi, since the mavoi was originally a rishus hayachid and now it's opening up into a rishus harabim without that appliance affixed to it properly, so then he does not paskin like Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, and we actually spoke this out yesterday in the name of Tosfos. Okay, let us go weiter. The Mishnah says, Habona aliyah al gabe shnei batim v'chein gesharim hamifulashim. So these two cases are where you have an overpass. That's really what we call it. They call it an overpass here too, right? And then when you have basically, there are two scenarios that the Mishnah describes, are where you have a rishus harabim, you have a house on either side of Bathurst, and you build a structure on the top of them that connects the two houses so that you can go from one house to the other over the overpass. So, or a similar case is where you have a bridge with side walls that goes over a rishus harabim from one side to the other. In both of those cases, directly underneath the bridge or the overpass, that's considered to be a rishus hayachid, and you're allowed to carry underneath, because basically you've got two kosher walls on either side of the rishus harabim, and then you've got two imaginary walls because of gud achis. You say that the side walls of the overpass are, you say, pitik or yored v'sosim. They go down and they enclose the area. So that's according to Rabbi Yehuda. So then therefore, metalton tachteim b'Shabbos divrei Rabbi Yehuda. However, the Chachamim say that that's aser. You're not allowed to carry. V'odam Rabbi Yehuda further said, ma'arvin lamavoy hamefulash v'chachamim osrim, that you're allowed to make an eruv and a mavoi that is open at both ends. And the similarity to this case is that just like over there, by the overpass, you have two good walls, and it's open from the other two sides. So too over here with the mavoi, you have two good walls, which is the walls of the alleyway. And even though it's open on both sides to Rishus Harabim, Rabbi Yehuda says just put a lechi or korah on either entrance, or on both entrances rather, and then it's permitted to carry. And the Chachamim there too say no, that since you don't have three walls, you can't create a lechi and a korah. You can only create a lechi and a korah when you have three good walls of enclosure, and the fourth wall opens up into Rishus Harabim. But if you only have if you only have two walls of enclosure, then we don't allow you to fix it with a lechi and korah on both sides. Okay, let's take a look at the Gemara. Amar Rabba lo tema hainu taima de Rabbi Yehuda mishum de kasavar beis mechitzos de oraisa ela mishum de kasavar pitikur yored v'sosem. So Rabbi says something that's a little bit startling. He says that the reason why Rabbi Yehuda, in the case of the overpass, allows you to carry is not because you simply have two walls that create your sufficient enclosure to allow you to carry, but it's actually two things that you have. You have two solid walls on either side of the Rishus Harabim, plus you have the side walls of the overpass where we say gud achis, and that considers it to be enclosed from all sides because we say pitikra yored v'sose. In other words, in the case of the overpass, without the principle of pitikra yored v'sose, Rabbi Yehuda would not allow you to carry. So Eisvei Abai is going to challenge that statement. Yes, or Alkein Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Misha yesh lo shnei batim mishnei tzidei rishus harabim, osa lechem mikan v'lechem mikan ukorim mikan v'nosiv v'nosein be'emtza. That Rabbi Yehuda is quoted in the Brisa as saying that even without an overpass, you're allowed to carry. In the following case, when you have two houses that are opposite each other on Bathurst Street, one on the east side and one on the west side, as long as you put up a lechi and a korah on both, a lechi or a korah on both doorways, then we allow you to carry from one to the other because you have two mechitzos, you have two walls, and that's all you need in order to allow you to carry via a rishus harabim. So, and the Chachamim say to him, Amrulo, ein ma'arvin rishus harabim bekach. And the Chachamim said, no, that's not sufficient to create an enclosure within a rishus harabim to allow you to carry. So how can you tell me that Rabbi Yehuda only is matir when you have an overpass, when here you don't have an overpass, and it's still okay? That's the question. So the Gemara says, Amar lei mehahi in, miha leka lemishmami. So Rabbi says, you misunderstood what I was trying to say. I wasn't saying that Rabbi Yehuda paskins that two mechitzos is insufficient. What I was trying to say is, from this case of the Mishnah, you cannot infer that Rabbi Yehuda holds that two mechitzos is sufficient. In other words, Taka Rabbi Yehuda does paskin that all you need is two mechitzos to enclose a rishus harabim, two solid walls. But from the case of the overpass, you cannot make that inference. Why? Because the case of the overpass has another benefit, which is you have the walls of the overpass to form the two imaginary walls and say pitikra yored v'sose. Amar Ravashi masnisa namidika. Ravashi says the Mishnah supports Rabba's assertion midikatani va'od Amar Rabbi Yehuda ma'arvin b'mavay hamafulosh v'chachamim osrin. Because the second case of our Mishnah is that furthermore Rabbi Yehuda said that when you have an open mavoi on both sides, then you can make a lechi and a korah on both entrances, and that'll permit you to carry. So Iyamart bishlama mishum dekasavar pitikar yard v'soseim hainu dekatani va'od. Ela Iyamart mishum dekasavar shtei mechitzos deoraisa my va'od shma mina. So I'm going to explain to you according to the second shot of Rashi. Rashi explains that what Ravashi's inference is as follows. Why does the Mishnah have to say furthermore Rabbi Yehuda said? What does furthermore mean? Furthermore means that not only did he say this, but he even holds of this. So if you tell me that the first case that he was addressing was when you have two mechitzos, plus you have the imaginary walls of the overpass, so then I would understand why he says, and furthermore Rabbi Yehuda said. Because what he's telling you is that not only do I permit you to carry in a rishus harabim when you have two solid walls and two imaginary walls, but I even allow you to carry in a rishus harabim when you just have two solid walls without the two imaginary walls of the overpass. Then the language of the Od Amar Rabbi Yehuda makes very good sense. But if the first case of Rabbi Yehuda, he's only being matir you to carry because you have two solid walls without the consideration of pitik or yored v'sosem, then why does the Mishnah have to say v'od Amar Rabbi Yehuda? Rabbi Yehuda furthermore said. It should have just said, and v'chein Amar Rabbi Yehuda, and similarly Rabbi Yehuda said. But when you say v'od Amar Rabbi Yehuda, that implies he's saying an even bigger chiddush than the first case. Okay, so that's the proof. Ha'janalach kol gagos. Now we're starting the last parak of Eruvin. Woohoo! Okay, Hamotzei tefillin. Hamotzei tefillin. If a person finds tefillin on Shabbos in a rishus harabim, what is he supposed to do? He doesn't want to leave them there because tefillin have kedusha. They have Hashem's name inside of them, and you have to treat them with the utmost of respect and reverence. So what is he supposed to do? They're out lying in the rishus harabim. So machnisan zug zug. What he does is he wraps tefillin, puts them on, and he walks into an area where they'll be protected, then he can take them off. There's no problem of carrying because he's wearing them. So Rabbi Gamliel Omer Shnaim Shnaim. Rabbi Gamliel says he doesn't have to just wear one pair at a time, he can wear two pairs at a time. Bamed var mamurim biyashanos. But that's only true, says the Gemara, when the tefillin have already been used. Which means what? It means, like Rashi explains, that you can actually discern because you have the ritzuos already tied in the proper knots to show that there's one for the shel rosh and one for the shel yad, so that these are actual tefillin. Aval b'chadoshos pater. But if they're new tefillin, which means all you see are these leather boxes, and the ritzuos have not been tied to them properly to show that they're meant for a shel rosh and a shel yad, then you're not chayiv to bring them inside. And Rashi explains, because you don't even know whether this is actually tefillin or not. It might be a kemeya, it might be an amulet, which doesn't even have Hashem's name, doesn't have the parshios of the Torah written in it at all, which is a little bit surprising to our sensibilities, because when you and I see a pair of tefillin, even when it doesn't have ritzuos, it's very clear that what this is, right? So you have to say that there were other leather boxes that were used as amulets that looked very similar to tefillin in the times of the Mishnah. And obviously, the methods of manufacture that we have today to make a perfectly cubic pair of tefillin did not exist in the times of the Gemara. But Baruch Hashem, we can make it exactly according to the specifications. If you find them, however, wrapped up or in bundles, so then it's therefore not practical to put them on one pair at a time. Then what you can do is you just have to, you have no other choice. You have to stand there until Shabbos is over and then bring them home Motzoi Shabbos. And the Gemara will explain what the difference between krichos and svasim is. We'll see later on. But in a time when it's dangerous for you to stand there the whole day because you're scared you might get attacked, so then just cover them up and you should go home because you're not supposed to endanger your life. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon has another option. He says that even when they're all bundled up, you pick them up, give them to a friend, and then your friend will give it to another friend, and you'll keep transferring back and forth, so no one is actually walking Dalet Amos until you get to a safe area where you can, in an enclosure, and you can deposit them there, and everything will be fine. V'chein beno, nos lechavero v'chavero lechavero afilu meya. And if similarly, if a woman gives birth out in the wilderness, right, the cab got stuck and she didn't make it to the hospital, and she gave birth, and you want to get the baby home safely, so you pass it from pass the baby from one person to another, just like at a bris, until you get the baby back to a safe place. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, no sein adam chavis lachavero v'chavero lachavero afilu chutz l'tchum. Rabbi Yehuda is even more mekel, and it sounds like even lechatchila he permits this, that if you have a barrel of food, of goods, and you want to get it to where you want to sit down and have a meal, then you can have a person transfer the barrel to another friend, and so forth and so on, even until 100 people, ad infinitum, until you get it to the place where you want to eat. And that's true, says Rabbi Yehuda, even if the owner of the barrel is in a different tchum. So let's say, for example, the barrel extends out to where your city and your friend's city intersect with each other, and that's where you find the barrel of goods. Rabbi Yehuda says, as long as no one travels more than Dalet Amos, you can keep transferring it, even if the barrel goes outside the tchum of its owner to where you want to go. And so, Amrulo, lo tahalach zu yoser meragli be'oleha. And the Chachamim said, no, the barrel can never go farther than the domain of its owner. So if the owner is constrained by his 2,000 amos, then that's where the barrel's tchum ends as well. The Gemara now says, let's analyze this din of tefillin first. Zug echad in tefelo. So you're only allowed to wear one pair of tefillin, according to the Tanakama. You're not allowed to wear a second pair. Lema tanan stama delo Rabbi Meir. So that let us suggest, therefore, that our Mishnah is not like Rabbi Meir. De'ika Rabbi Meir ha'amar lovesh kol mashi yochol lilbosh va'otev kol mashi yochol la'atov. According to Rabbi Meir, when there is a fire, remember we learned about this in Masechah Shabbos, when there's a fire, now remember we're talking about a fire whereby there's no sakana involved, but because there are no neighbors, and you can get everyone out safely, you just have to let the house burn down. So in that scenario, there is a remedy to allow you to remove the goods out of the house, and the way that you do that is that you can put on all of the clothing that you can comfortably fit and walk out of the house that way. So l'chora, that does not shtim with our Gemara, because our Gemara says you can only wear one pair of tefillin. Why shouldn't you be allowed to wear multiple pairs of tefillin, just like you can wear multiple garments, multiple coats, and so forth? Ditnan l'sham motzi kol kalei tashmisho v'lovish kol mashi yochel ilbosh v'otev kol mashi yochel la'atov. As the Mishnah says that you have every right to do that when you're wearing when you have a chatzir outside of the house. you can put on as many clothes as you can fit and walk out of the house that way. Now the Gemara just asks, how do you know that Mishnah goes according to Rabbi Meir? The Katani Allah, lo veishu motziu poshet, velo veishu motziu poshet, afilu kol yom kulo divrei Rabbi Meir. Because we have a brisa that is very consistent with that Mishnah and is quoted the name of Rabbi Meir, who says that you can make multiple trips going back and forth into the house, out of the house, into the house, out of the house, as many times as you possibly can safely, and put on as many coats and as many layers of garments as you wish, in order to get as many clothes out as possible. We're talking on Shabbos, of course. So the Gemara says it seems to be that our Mishnah, which only allows you to wear one pair of tefillin at the time, does not hold like Rabbi Meir. Now, the Gemara is making an assumption over here, and Rashi speaks this out. The assumption that the Gemara is making is that Shabbos is the time of wearing tefillin, and therefore it's like a normative thing that you would wear, just like a garment. So if you can wear multiple garments, why can't you wear multiple pairs of tefillin? So Amar Rava afilu tema Rabbi Meir hasam derech malbusho kechol shavua rabbanan v'hacha derech malbusho kechol shavua rabbanan. He says no. There's a fundamental difference between garments and a pair of tefillin. We allow you to wear garments on Shabbos to save them, just like you would normally wear clothes during the week. And we do the same thing for tefillin, and there's actually no difference. Hasam debechol kama deboy lavish le'inyan hatzalanami sharu le'rabanan. Hacha debechol nami zug echad in tfeilo le'inyan hatzalanami zug echad in tfeilo. So the Gemara explains. He says, just like when it comes to during the week, a person could wear multiple layers of clothing, and that's considered to be normative. So too on Shabbos, when you want to save multiple garments, we allow you to wear multiple garments. There's nothing wrong. People all the time will put on a sweater and a coat and another coat if they're really, really cold. So we allow you to do this in order to save your stuff. No one wears more than one pair of tefillin at the time. And therefore, since the normative method of wearing tefillin is only one pair, that's all that we allow you to put on at one time.
Before Rabbeinu Tam.
Before Rabbeinu Tam. Well, but even those who put on the Rabbeinu Tam, they don't put it on at the same time. Except certain customs do have two at the same time, but certainly is indicated from this Gemara that doesn't seem to be
one pair.
That doesn't seem to be the normative tradition. But in any event, that's an interesting discussion. But you see from this Gemara that that's considered to be non-normative, and therefore we only allow you to wear one pair at a time. So now, but again, like Rashi points out, it seems very clear from this Gemara that Shabbos is a time of wearing tefillin. And that's why, just like you normally wear clothes on Shabbos, you normally wear tefillin on Shabbos. And just like you can normally wear multiple layers of clothing, we allow you to save multiple layers of clothing at the same time. But on Shabbos, we only allow you to do that which you would normatively do, and therefore you can only wear one pair of tefillin at the time. Now let's take a look at Rabbi Gamliel's shita. Rabbi Gamliel Omer Shnaim Shnaim. Rabbi Gamliel says you can wear two at a time. So the Frek the Gemara Maika Savar. So what is Rabbi Gamliel's shita? Ikasavar Shabbos man tefillin hu zug echad in tefelo. If he holds that Shabbos is a time when you normally wear tefillin, and therefore the normative method of wearing tefillin is one pair at a time, and that's why the Chachamim hold that you're only allowed to wear one pair at a time, so then Rabbi Gamliel should agree to that as well. You shouldn't be allowed to wear more than one pair. However, v'ika savar Shabbos lavzman tefillin hu umishum hatzala derech malbush sharulei rabbanon afilu tfei nami. But if you're going to tell me that according to Rabbi Gamliel, Shabbos, there is no mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos. So why then do we permit you to put tefillin on your head? Why? Because it's considered to be a malbush, and as long as you're wearing something, we allow you to save it. And Rabbi Gamliel basically therefore says that tefillin is no different from putting a cap on your head. Well, if we allow you to put multiple caps on your head, then why don't we allow you to put multiple pairs of tefillin on your head? In other words, it's one thing if you hold that the tefillin there's a mitzvah of wearing tefillin on Shabbos, then I could understand that you say, well, since the mitzvah, the normative way that you do the mitzvah is only by wearing one pair, and that's why the Chachamim permit you to wear it in a way that you're performing the mitzvah, so then I can understand the shita of the Chachamim. But Rabbi Gamliel, mimon avshach, if you hold like the Chachamim that the Shabbos is zman tefillin, then only one pair and not more. And if you hold that Shabbos is not zman tefillin, there's no mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos, then why don't we let you wear multiple pairs of tefillin, more than two, just like we allow you to wear multiple layers of clothing? So the Gemara answers, La'olam kesavar Shabbos lavzman tefillin hu, v'chishar rabbanon le'inin hatzala derech malbush b'makom tefillin. The answer is, says the Gemara, that in reality Rabbi Gamliel holds that there is no mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos. So why are you allowed to save the tefillin in the first place? Because we consider it to be a malbush. We consider it to be a type of garment that you're wearing. And when the Chachamim permit you to wear it, they permit you to wear it in the place where you normally put tefillin. Ihachi zug echad nami in tefelo. If that's the case, then where is the placement of the tefillin on the head? There's only room for one pair of tefillin on the head. And if you're telling me that the Chachamim that Rabbi Gamliel only permits you to wear the tefillin in a place where you normatively wear it, then you should only be, and that's the only thing that they permitted you to do, then you should only be allowed to wear one pair of tefillin. So Amar Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak, Makom yesh berosh lo niach bo shtei tefillin. Answers Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak that in reality there's room for two pairs of tefillin, two shalrosh tefillins on the head. And since there is room for two that can fit comfortably on the head without protruding outwards and without being awkward, so therefore we allow you to wear two, like wearing two caps. Right? So the Gemara now says, Hanicha, Derosh, Diyad, Ma'ikal Meimar. But that only works out well that there's room for two Shalroshes. But since when is there room for two Shalyads? There is no room for two Shalyads. There's only room for one Shalyad. So the Gemara says, Kida Rav Huna. Well, you can cite Rav Huna. The Amar Rav Huna, Pa'amim Sha'adam Bamin Hasadeh, V'chavilaso al Rosho, U'misalkon Merosho, V'koshron Bizro'o. Because sometimes, says Rav Huna, a person will sometimes come out of the field after a long day of work and he's schlepping a bundle of goods that he harvested from the field and he wants to carry it on his head, but he's wearing his tefillin, so we give him permission to take the shalrosh off of his head and put them on his arm instead and tie them to his arm. So you see that Rav Huna says that you see that there is room on the shalrosh for a second box. So the Gemara says, but wait a minute. Amar de Amar Rav Huna shelo yenahig bahen derech bizayam. Ro, yimi Amar question mark. But all you see from there is that Rav Huna says that in a situation where you're worried about being mevazeh, desecrating the tefillin by squashing them under a bundle of goods, there Rav Huna gives you permission to wrap the shalrosh around your arm. But since when does he say that there's room on the arm for a second pair of tefillin? That you don't see necessarily from this statement. Ela kid Amar Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak, Makom yesh berosh shroi laniach bo shtei tefillin, hachanami makom yesh beyad shroi laniach bo shtei tefillin. But rather, let's resort back to Rav Shmuel's statement that just like there's room on the head to place two boxes of shalrosh tefillin, so too on the bicep there is enough room to place two shalyad boxes of tefillin. By the way, this is also a challenge to the minhag Chabad of wearing the big boxes.
There's no room
because there doesn't seem to be room. So you have to mitzvah liyashev. I'm just saying this is like one of the kashas they ask on the minhag Chabad.
Right.
Okay, so Tana devei Menashe al yadcha zu kibores beinenecha zu kadkod. So the Brisa says that when the Torah says al yadcha, you shall place the tefillin on the shalyad on your arm, zu kibores. This refers to the bicep. And bein einecha, between your eyes, zukadko, this refers to placement on the skull. So now the skull is a big place, so therefore the Gemara says, heicha, where on the skull do you place the tefillin? So Amri devei Rabbi Yanai, makam shemocho shel tinok rofes, the soft spot of an infant's head, which we call in medical terms, what do we call it, Harold? The anterior fontanelle. Right? That's what it's called. And if you look at Rashi, that's what Rashi calls it as well. Take a look at Rashi. What does Rashi call it? Uvela'az fontina. That's the fontanelle. It's the exact same spot. It's the soft spot. So now the Gemara says, Lema b'derav Shmuel barav Yitzchak kamiflagi. So now the Gemara says, okay, now that we've got it clear that we've got the Chachamim say that you can only wear one pair, and Rabbi Gamliel says you can wear two pairs. And remember, we said it's because Rabbi Gamliel says that it's not the zman of tefillin, but there's room as a malbush to wear two pairs of tefillin. Let us therefore suggest that the Rabbanan say the same thing. It's only that they hold, even though Shabbos is lav zman tefillin, they hold that there's only room to wear one pair of tefillin on your head, whereas Rabbi Gamliel holds like Rav Shmuel, who says that there's room to wear two pairs of tefillin on the head. The Tanakama Lesley, the Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak, Rabbi Gamliel Isley, the Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak. So the Gemara says low, not necessarily, because I could argue like this: the Kulei Alma Islahu, the Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak. Really, I'll tell you, everyone holds that there is room for two pairs of tefillin on your head and on your arm. But the machlokus between the Tanakama and Gamliel is Shabbos the time? Is there a mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos? The Tanakama saver Shabbos man tefillin hu, Rabbi Gamliel saver Shabbos lavs man tefillin hu. That the Tanakama holds that Shabbos is the time of wearing tefillin, and if you take a look at Rashi explains like this. He says, "Umishum hatzala lo mishru bei rabbanan tfei min mitzvah." He says tefillin is not considered to be a garment like a cap. The only reason why we allow you to save tefillin is because in the course of putting it on, you're doing a mitzvah. So it's only considered to be not carrying if you're doing a mitzvah while wearing the tefillin. But if you're not doing a mitzvah while wearing the tefillin, then we wouldn't allow you to even put on one pair of tefillin according to the Tanakama. So therefore the Tanakama holds that it's considered to be a mitzvah on Shabbos to put on tefillin. And that's why he allows you to wear one pair. Why not let you wear a second pair? For two reasons. Number one, the second pair is not the mitzvah, and therefore it's only a tachshit, and tefillin by definition is not a tachshit unless you're in the course of doing a mitzvah. And second of all, explains Rashi, there's another problem, which is you're being over on Bal Tosif. Just like you're not allowed to add another tassel to your talis to create 5 corners, so too you're not allowed to wear a second pair of tefillin because you're over on the mitzvah of Bal Tosif. You shall not add to the mitzvahs.
But you're talking about there's a sakon, there's a fire.
No. Here we're talking about where it's out in Rishus Harabim and you want to just protect it, right? But even if there's not it's not so much an issue of sakana, but you want to protect the tefillin. It's a bizayim, right? But still, you have two problems according to the Chachamim. Number one, you're carrying, and number two, it's Bal Tosif if you put on the second pair. But Rabbi Gamliel says that no, that the reason really there's no mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos, and as a result, the reason why you're allowed to wear even one pair of tefillin is because it's a malbush. And once it has a din of a malbush as a garment, then you can wear multiple malbushim, just like you can wear multiple layers of clothing. And furthermore, there's no problem of Bal Tosif, of adding on to a mitzvah, because since there's no mitzvah, there's no problem of Bal Tosif. So that's one explanation, that the machlokas between the Tanakam and Gamliel is Shabbos man tefillin hu. Is there a mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos or not? The Iboyas Ema, I'll tell you another pshat. The Kuli Alma Shabbos man tefillin hu, that everyone holds that Shabbos is the time of tefillin. Even Rabbi Gamliel holds there's a mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos. The hacha b'mitzvah srichas kavana kamiflagi. And the machlokas over here is, do you have to have mental intent when performing a mitzvah in order for the mitzvah to be fulfilled? And I'm going to change the girsa here according to the second version of Rashi. Tanakama savar lotzeis lo boi kavana, that according to the Tanakama, in order to fulfill a mitzvah, you don't need kavana. And Rabbi Gamliel savar boi kavana. And Rabbi Gamliel holds you do need to have kavana. If you take a look at the last 3 lines of Rashi, he says, "V'nira li dahachi garsin Tanakama savar mitzvahs ein srichas kavana u'likaloi alma tachshid hein." That really everyone holds that the tefillin is considered to be an adornment. It's like a malbush. Hilkach keven dilein in meifik yidei chavase nafik below kavana. Since you fulfill the mitzvah of tefillin even without any kavana, so le'inyan Bal Tosif nami. So then there's an additional problem of a Bal Tosif. If I were to put on 2 pairs of tefillin according to the Tanakama, since mitzvahs lo tzrichas kavana, then I'm going to be automatically being over on Bal Tosif even without my intention of wearing the second pair of tefillin for the sake of the mitzvah. Because by de facto, anytime I put on a mitzvah or I do a mitzvah, even without kavana, I'm performing the mitzvah. So if I do a mitzvah in an abnormal fashion, in an illicit fashion, then I've been over on doing the mitzvah in a Bal Tosif way, even without kavana. And that's why the Chachamim don't allow me to wear a second pair of tefillin, because I'm automatically going to be over on Bal Tosif, whether I intend to or not. According to Rabbi Gamliel, the only time you're over on Bal Tosif is if your intention is for the mitzvah. But if your intention of wearing a second pair of tefillin is not for the mitzvah, then you're not over on Bal Tosif. So knock yourself out and put on a second pair of tefillin, because you're doing it not for the mitzvah, but you're doing it in order to protect it. We have to close this out and go a little bit further. The Iboy Yisema, I'll give you another teretz, says the Gemara. We have 2 more. So far we've seen 2 explanations. We're going to see 2 more. The Iboy Yisema to Kuli Alma Lotse Sloboi Kavana. Another explanation would be that when it comes to fulfilling a mitzvah, everyone holds that you don't need kavana. Mitzvahs einot tzrichas kavana. You don't need kavana to fulfill a mitzvah. V'hacha lavra mishum bal tosif kamifuli. But the machlokes is, do you need kavana strictly in order to be over in bal tosif? So that Tanakama sarva lavra mishum bal tosif lo boy kavana. Rabbi Gamliel sarva lavra mishum bal tosif boy kavana. That is very similar to the previous shot. But here, even Rabbi Gamliel holds that you're makayim the mitzvah because mitzvah ain't tzrichas kavana. It's only that he holds that you're not over on bal tosif if you put on a second pair without kavana, because bal tosif requires kavana, even though mitzvah ain't tzrichas kavana. And finally, the fourth pshat is v'i boyes ema I the sphirulon de Shabbos man tefillin de kuliyama lo la'avor boy kavana v'lo lotzeis boy kavana, as follows. If you hold that Shabbos is the time of there is a mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos, then everyone would agree that you don't need kavana in order to fulfill the mitzvah, and you don't need kavana to be over on bal tosif. So if Shabbos there is a mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos, then everyone would agree that you cannot put on a second pair of tefillin because you're automatically over in bal tosif regardless of your kavana. So therefore you have to say that both the Tanakama and Rabbi Gamliel hold that Shabbos is not the time for tefillin. There is no mitzvah of tefillin on Shabbos, and the question is as follows. When I do a mitzvah that is not today, there is no mitzvah of doing that mitzvah. Today I have no obligation to perform that mitzvah. But I do it anyway. Have I been over on bal tosif or not because I've added an extra day to the performance of this mitzvah? So according to Tanakama Sarva Lo Boy Kavana, Tanakama says, yes, you're going to be over on bal tosif by performing a mitzvah on a day when you're not commanded to, and that's why you can't wear two pairs. Rabbi Gamliel Sarva Lavar Shal Bismano Boy Kavana. Rabbi Gamliel says, no, only if you have specific kavana that I'm doing this to fulfill a mitzvah on a time when I'm not obligated to, are you over on bal tosif? But the Gemara asks the obvious question: Ihachi Rabbi Meir zugecha namilo. But according to the Tanakhama Reb Meir, then even one pair of tefillin should be usher to put on Shabbos, since I have no mitzvah and I don't need kavana to be over in bal tosif. So then even putting on one pair should be usher. Va'od, and let me ask you another question: Hayachin bashmini basukah yilakeh. That if a person sleeps in the sukkah on Shmini Atzeres, when there's no mitzvah of sleeping in the sukkah, he should get malchus. And we never find that. While he's not obligated to sleep in the sukkah on Shmini Atzeres, if he does, you're going to tell me he gets malchus? That we never heard. So the Gemara says that Ela machbarta kiddushanin mi'ikara. But rather, we'll stick with the first three answers. The fourth answer we're going to have to reject, because the reality is that there's no isser of bal tosif when a person, unless he has explicit kavanah to be mekayim mitzvah, but if you know that there's no mitzvah today, and you're sleeping in the sukkah, or putting on a pair of tefillin is not for the purpose of being mekayim the mitzvah on a day when you're not obligated to, so then there's no isser of bal tosif automatically. By the way, this has many ramifications when it comes to what your conduct on Shmini Atzeres in the diaspora, in Golis. Because the Shulchan Aruch says you're supposed to eat in the sukkah, but you don't make a bracha because it's a sveika diyoma. So what are you supposed to do? So there are those who want to argue that there could be the potentiality of bal tosif if you sleep in the sukkah on Shmini Atzeres, since you're doing it for the sake of the mitzvah, but it's a much longer discussion because of the sveika diyoma issue. But at least though, potentially, if it's clearly recognizable that no one would eat in the circumstances that you're eating in, then there could be a bal tosif issue. But the bottom line is that here we're not addressing sveika diyoma. We're talking about a Shmini Atzeres in Eretz Yisrael. The Gemara says there's no bal tosif as long as your kavana is not to fulfill the mitzvah of sukkah.